thank you so much. And thank you, Etienne, for that really useful summary. Really picking up key points, I think, around impact, sustainability and scale. And just to reflect on that last point, because you're right, constantly told how interesting some of these initiatives are. So how do we replicate them within nations, beyond nations? And increasingly coming back to the issue that this is driven often by administrative efficiency demands, because what we've found with food sharing initiatives in Sharecity is that they're kind of distributed activities. And despite the kind of, I suppose, despite the opportunities that ICT and smart technologies offer to deal with such distributed kind of activities, still lots of decision makers and policymakers we found in our research really wanted the one-stop shop. They wanted the large kind of organization that would take the administrative burden of dealing with lots of different activities at the small scale. So our challenge was to retain the context in place-based relevance and resonance, whilst also recognizing that there are commonalities across the research we did, even in depth across 9 countries. There were common challenges. We had a workshop in Dublin in 2019 called Sharing Futures, where we brought together practitioners, policy shapers, academics to try and identify the challenges, because what we found was that we were increasingly identifying sustainability benefits, and we were increasingly being able to demonstrate them in different ways, in different formats, in different constructs, but we didn't seem to be progressing with increasing the supports for these kinds of activities in certain policy contexts. And so I think, you know, we kind of ended up with the view that the sustainability impact assessment is necessary, but alone insufficient to kind of make the changes that I think some of the other projects were alluding to through a series theory of change. And really we need to be able to bring together sort of and critique kind of economies of worth. It always makes me think of the work of Thevenot and Boltanski that talk about these different economies of worth, of valuing different things. And for many of the policymakers that we spoke to, the challenges were not recognizing the value of food sharing, but dealing with the administrative maintenance, management challenges that these kinds of distributed activities exhibited. So I'll just leave that.
Thank you, Anna, for your comments. Do anyone want to share any comment or doubt, or if you have questions? No?
Just adding something about what has been said here is that it's not only to convince policymakers, because the decision makers are all of us. The policymakers are also consumers, NGOs, and social organizations. So I think your projects show that there is a grassroots change happening without any decision from the policymakers. But the scaling means that sharing experience between grassroots organizations can provide a convincing case for the policymakers, I think, instead of trying to interface directly with policymakers, but widening the scale of these changes. These 5 projects show that very well. And the map of UK showing all these cases involved in the study is very convincing case, I think. So it's not only convincing the policymakers, it's also convincing supermarkets, distribution, beyond the conflict of interest and the conflict of values. The example of sharing, Share It in Ireland is incredible, saying that you involve supermarket discussing about the value of sharing. This is against their value. Obviously, this is not the business model. So I think it's very powerful.
Yes, Alison.
Yeah, I wonder if, just to throw an idea out, and Etienne, your excellent discussant contribution prompted me to think about this. I wonder if there's value in thinking about incremental or sort of more transitional versus transformational, and the difference between those two ideas. So are we right now at more of an incremental transitional phase that's leading, if the scaling out happens, to the scaling up and the more institutional, and also the scaling deep, which is the more socio-normative change in the future? I wonder if anybody has any thoughts about that, or whether that's not relevant here.
I can come back in there. Certainly, I think that as researchers, we in the Share City project, we were looking for and identifying some elements that you might see as transformational or outside the kind of current system. But for many of the food sharing initiatives, they had no revolutionary aspirations. They were dealing very explicitly with particular goals that their contexts and their localities were experiencing around food, whether that be health related, whether it be about social cohesion and integration, whether that be around food, access to food, or other things. So, so in many cases, they didn't see themselves as changing the world, but dealing with specific problems kind of in the meanwhile. So yeah, so we were, I suppose, much more radical as researchers coming in than many of the initiatives that we worked with, that were dealing very much on an everyday basis, on day-to-day challenges. And yes, there were many inspirational examples that we came across, but many of them were also precarious. And so they were doing fantastic work in a locality, but there was no guarantee that they would persist. And often they were invisible to many of those that might support them. And that's why, yeah, working with other partners, whether it be retailers or public authorities in different institutions, were really, really helpful. Just making visible what these activities were doing. We increasingly found that in our research, both ethnographically and otherwise, was that just many of these things flew under the radar for those people who had the capacity and the resources to support them in a longer term. So particularly in an Irish context and in the Dublin context, it was about raising awareness that these activities were going on, and raising awareness of what they actually did. And lots of positive responses from Environmental Protection Agency, from local development groups, but the challenge was really to not disaggregate their benefits, but to see them in the round. And this was our challenge, because the way that the silo thinking happens in Dublin City Council, for example, means that it's very difficult to aggregate the benefits from food sharing, clearly, because the policymakers were interested in very specific things, and there is no food department, say, in Dublin City Council. So it was nobody's job, I guess, when they woke up in the morning to think about these kinds of activities, and as a result, they were invisible to many. So the Share It tool enabled that kind of communication as well.
Pierre, do you want to? No, sorry. I see
Yeah,
that
maybe.
you mute your microphone.
Yeah, but maybe one point about indicators, because in Ciolinov, it's like a ready-to-use methodology with 14 indicators. But I do think that you can obviously imagine all the indicators that are relevant for the places, and especially with this impact pathway. With people, you can spot the main changes and invent and co-create the indicators that are totally specific for your territory. And I was just thinking about what Alize was talking about, creating indicators with the technician or the expert, the consultant. But I think it's relevant too to organize this kind of workshop with the beneficiary, with the people we target, because they are the ones who are capable to express what would be the desirable situation according to them, for food access, for price, for social links, and so on. So I think we do not have to be afraid of indicators, but it's more like it can be a tool to show where we want to go, maybe to objectify. I don't know if it's correct in English.
Thank you, Pierre. So if there are no more questions, so maybe I will let you, Elodie, if you want to conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Geraldine. But I see that Alison is still here. So Alison, if you want to add something, please jump in. I will just have a few words and give you a minute if you can. That's okay. So I want to thank everyone because it was a really great webinar. Thanks to the participants, and thanks to the panelists. It's been a while since we spotted all your projects and thinking, wow, we have to talk with these people because we are just dealing with the same issues. And so I'm really glad that we managed to organize this meeting. This is a pity that we could not meet in person, but I'm sure, because I'm sure that we would have a lot more to discuss together. And I hope this is not the last opportunity for us to discuss our issues and our solutions too. So let's say that it is the first step of fruitful collaboration that we can continue in the future. That's my formal conclusion, but I just wanted to add something. What struck me when I was listening to all of you is that we deal with the same issues, and Etienne underlined it very, very well. We have this scaling issue that is completely overwhelming for all of us, because we have our methods, and this is a scaling issue for the methods, but also for the transformation, because we deal with very, as you said, place-based project or local innovations, and we are able to assess the impact of this very isolated or very small project on sustainability, but how do we do to make them contribute to a greater transformation? That's the issue we are dealing with, obviously. And actually, that's what we are dealing with Herbal in this last year of the project. And I was really interested to see how you are coping with the same issues, trying to imagine how we can scale up or out, and how we can go from a very local issues to a greater scale. And I think that one of the way we are working with is to look for simple and catchy ways to share our results. And it can sound trivial, but I think it's really important. And Etienne, you said it also, we need to find ways to disseminate our results or the results in order to make them attractive and simple and accessible to everyone, in order to help building this community of practices. And I think that is what you try to do with Shared City, and it is really, really interesting the three ways you decided to propose your results. I think it's three great ways to scaling, actually. So I don't have solutions, obviously, but I think that this need to work on the way we want to share our research results. We have to work very seriously on that in the future. That's it for me. Alison, you want to add something?
I think we're all looking to develop different processes where we share common goals. So we're all working towards place-based variations of sustainability. And we're also in many projects working either directly or indirectly with participants, so that what we're doing really reflects what's happening on the ground. And I was also glad to hear that policymakers are involved in some of these projects, because that really helps to shift decision makers' minds about how these kinds of initiatives, alternative food systems, as Cozy Food said, can become more, or can be recognized for doing the sustainable work that they're doing, and bring them together in a way that they can have more impact. And I think Share is great for that too. And all the projects are really working towards that kind of thing. So I learned a lot. Thank you so much. And as Elodie said, hopefully we'll be able to have another webinar, or maybe even someday meet each other in person. That would be delightful. And thanks to our technical support, much appreciated. And thanks to the panelists, you've been amazing. And our audience too, that many people hung in until the very end. So thanks to all the questions and interest.
Yes, thank you very much to all the panelists and the participants. Also, a special thanks to Amanda Di Battista and Heather Reyes from Wilfrid Laurier University for the support in the organization of this seminar. And I remind that a recording of the seminar will be made available on the Urbal website. So thank you again for all these fruitful exchanges, and so goodbye.